Marianne arrived at St. Clair Manor with empty hands and a broken heart, but she found something no one expected. The wealthiest widower in the county touched her tangled hair with a gentleness that made the entire estate stop and stare. And can you imagine what happens when a man of those times, accustomed to commanding hundreds of people, kneels before a girl with nothing, no dowry, no family, and combs her strands as if touching precious silk? But this story happened in rural Georgia in March of 1912, when the distance between the rich and the poor was a chasm that seemed impossible to cross. Before we continue, tell me something. Write in the comments where you are watching from. I want to know if this story is reaching far and wide. Comment your city, your state, even your country if you are outside the US. And if you like true love stories, the kind that warm the heart, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. This helps so much in letting more people find these stories. Now come with me, because this story will move you from beginning to end. Marianne Fields was 19 years old when she first stepped onto the red clay road that led to St. Clair Manor. It was a March morning, with that strong southern sun that warms the skin and leaves the air vibrating. She came hitching a ride on a supply wagon, sitting between sacks of flour and beans, clutching a small bundle against her chest that contained everything she had left in the world. 2 mended dresses, a hairbrush with half the bristles missing, a rosary that had belonged to her grandmother, and a faded photograph of her parents. The smell of ripe earth and crops took over everything. The cotton fields extended as far as the eye could see, endless rows of green shrubs. Marianne had never seen so much wealth concentrated in one place. She came from a small town in North Georgia, where her father had a small general store and her mother took in sewing. Simple, honest people who never had much, but always had enough. Until the typhoid fever arrived. The disease took her father first. 3 days of high fever, delirium, his body burning from the inside. Her mother tried to care for him, never leaving his bedside even to sleep. She ended up catching it too. Marianne watched them both die a week apart, helpless, terrified, praying so much her voice went hoarse. When her father was buried, she still had her mother. When her mother was buried too, Marianne realized she was completely alone in the world. The store had debts. The landlord took everything to cover back rent. The few pieces of furniture were sold to pay for the funerals. Marianne was left with literally nothing. She slept 3 nights at a neighbor's house out of pity, but the woman had 7 children and could barely feed her own family. On the 4th day, the neighbor came with news. She knew someone who had heard that St. Clair Manor, over towards Lawrenceville, needed help in the kitchen. They didn't pay much, but they gave food and a place to sleep. Marianne accepted without thinking twice. Anything was better than begging or starving. She made the 3-day journey, catching rides on wagons, walking long distances when there was no transport, sleeping in barns by the roadside. Her hair, which she used to keep in a neat bun, became tangled, full of road dust. The blue dress that was her best, the only one left that wasn't completely worn out, tore at the hem when she had to climb a fence. The boots that had been her mother's had heels that were almost worn through. When the wagon finally stopped at the gate of St. Clair Manor, Marianne climbed down, thanking the driver with a voice thin from exhaustion. Her legs were trembling. She hadn't eaten properly in 2 days, just a piece of hard cornbread a charitable woman had given her in one of the barns. The sun was high. It must have been nearly noon. The heat was suffocating. The estate gate was imposing, made of solid wood, with wrought iron details. An arch above bore the name carved in large, elegant letters, St. Clair Manor. Marianne passed underneath it feeling tiny. The main driveway of the property was lined with towering oak trees that seemed to touch the sky. In the distance, atop a gentle rise, stood the main house. It was a magnificent antebellum construction, 2 stories high, painted white with dark wooden shutters and doors. The front porch had thick columns and a spacious veranda with rocking chairs. The roof tiles were slate grey, shining under the sun. Around the mansion were well-kept gardens with rose bushes, jasmine, and those large, colourful flowers whose names Marianne didn't know. Everything there breathed wealth, tradition, power. Marianne followed the driveway slowly, each step weighing more than the last. Her legs were weak, her head light. She needed to get to the house, needed to speak to someone, explain she had come for the job. But the path seemed endless. The sun beat directly on her head. Her empty stomach churned. Her vision began to darken at the edges. She was halfway between the gate and the manor when her legs simply gave way. Marianne felt the ground come to meet her, the red earth warm against her face. She heard distant voices, hurried footsteps. Someone shouted. Then everything went dark. Marianne woke up lying in a real bed, with clean sheets that smelled of lavender. The sensation was so good, so surreal, that she thought she was dreaming. She opened her eyes slowly. She was in a small but tidy room, with whitewashed walls, and a window letting in the soft light of late afternoon. There was a simple dresser, a crucifix on the wall, and a pitcher of water with a basin to wash her face. It took a few seconds for Marianne to remember where she was. The journey, the estate, the fainting spell. She tried to sit up, but her head spun. That was when she realized she was no longer wearing the torn blue dress. Someone had changed her clothes. She was now wearing a clean cotton nightgown, simple, but infinitely better than anything she owned. The bedroom door opened with a soft creak. A black woman of about 60 entered, her greying hair tied in a colourful kerchief, her body sturdy, face round and kind. She carried a wooden tray with a steaming mug and a covered plate. "You're awake, child," the woman said with a warm voice. "Gave us quite a scare, fainting like that right in the middle of the road." The woman approached, placing the tray on a small table beside the bed. "I'm Bernice, the head cook here at the manor. And you must be Marianne, the one they sent word was coming to work in the kitchen." Marianne tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Bernice took the mug and offered it. "Here, it's chicken broth, nice and hot. You need to eat something. You're skin and bone, girl. When was the last time you ate properly?" Marianne drank the broth slowly, feeling the hot liquid going down and bringing life back to her body. 2 days ago, she murmured with a weak voice. "I didn't have money to buy food on the road." Bernice made a sound with her tongue, disapproval mixed with pity. 2 days, she repeated, shaking her head, "and travelling 3 days to get here. It's a miracle you made it. Go on, eat this bread and butter. Slowly, don't rush, or you'll get sick." Marianne obeyed, eating slowly as instructed. Every bite was a blessing. The bread was fresh, the butter creamy and salted just right. She didn't know food could taste this good. While she ate, Bernice sat on the edge of the bed and explained what had happened. "You fainted out on the main drive," the cook recounted. "The workers saw it, ran to tell someone. Mr. North himself went out there and carried you all the way here, put you in this bed, ordered me to take care of you. Said you were going to work with us in the kitchen, but needed to recover first." Marianne stopped chewing. "Mr. North?" she asked with a hesitant voice. "The owner of the estate," replied Bernice. "Mr. Vincent North. He's a good man, serious, hard-working. Lost his wife 2 years ago, left a widower young, poor thing. Since then it's just work, work, work. Barely smiles. But he's fair with the help, pays on time, doesn't let anyone go without." Marianne felt something strange in her chest. The owner of the estate in person had carried her, a complete stranger, a servant? That made no sense. Men of that station didn't touch poor folk. She must have been dirty from the trip, reeking of sweat and dust. Why would he do that? Bernice seemed to read her thoughts. "He's not like other rich landowners I know," she said with a small smile. "He's got education, studied in the big city, but didn't get stuck up. Treats us with respect. Of course, he's the boss and we're the help. Things are how they are, but he's different, that I guarantee. Marianne finished eating in silence, processing all of it. She had come to work, to earn food and a roof. She didn't expect kindness, didn't expect to be cared for. She expected only to survive, but there she was, lying in a clean bed, with hot food in her stomach, being treated with a gentleness she hadn't received in a long time. "Rest today," instructed Bernice, taking the empty tray. "Tomorrow morning you start work. The job in the kitchen isn't easy, mind you. Have to wake up before the sun rises, prepare coffee for the hands, then lunch, then supper. There's wood to chop, pots to wash, the stove to clean. But you seem strong, girl. Thin but strong. You'll handle it." Marianne nodded. "I'll handle it. Yes, Miss Bernice," she said with determination. "I came to work, and I'm going to work hard. I won't let anyone down." The cook smiled, satisfied. "I know you won't, child. Now sleep a little more. Tomorrow life starts over." Bernice left, taking the tray. Marianne was alone again, lying in that bed that felt like a piece of heaven after so many hard days. She looked at the ceiling, at the shadows. The late afternoon light drew on the wooden beams. She thought of her parents, buried in that distant town she would likely never see again. She thought of everything she had lost. And then she thought of everything she might yet gain. Marianne slept deeply that night. She slept without dreams, without nightmares, just the heavy sleep of someone exhausted to the bone. When she woke up, the sun hadn't risen yet. There was a lantern lit in the hallway, casting a weak light on the path. She dressed in the clean dress someone had left folded on the dresser. It was simple, of thick brown cotton, but it was whole, without tears, without stains. Work clothes. The estate kitchen was in a building attached to the main house, connected by a covered breezeway. It was enormous, with 2 huge wood-burning stoves, a long table of solid wood stained by years of use, shelves full of copper and iron pots, sacks of flour and sugar stacked in a corner, hooks on the ceiling from which hung sausages, pieces of cured meat and dried herbs. The smell was of wood smoke mixed with fresh coffee and something baking in the oven. Bernice was already there, commanding 2 other younger women who worked in silence. "Morning, child," she greeted upon seeing Marianne. "Slept well? Come on, come here. I'm going to teach you the chores." Marianne dove into the work like someone diving into cold water. She learned to light the stove properly, controlling the fire with wood of different sizes. She learned to prepare strong, bitter coffee the way the workers liked it, 5 pounds of grounds boiling in giant pots. She learned to slice bread in industrial quantities, to make thick grits, to fry eggs by the dozen. The work was heavy, yes. The pots were huge and heavy. The wood needed to be carried from the shed to the kitchen, armful after armful throughout the day. The heat of the stoves was brutal, leaving her face red and her body soaked in sweat. But Marianne didn't complain once. She had food 3 times a day, she had a place to sleep, she had security. That was more than she had in the last few weeks. It was more than many people had. Bernice was demanding but fair. She taught with patience but expected Marianne to learn fast. The other 2 women, Joan and Rita, were cordial but distant, too busy with their own work to make friends. The routine was always the same. Wake up before dawn, work until the family's lunch was served, rest for an hour, go back to prepare supper, clean everything, sleep. Marianne didn't see Vincent North. The family's food was taken to the dining room of the manor by Matilda, the widowed sister-in-law who managed the house. Matilda was a woman of 35, thin and elegant, always dressed in fine clothes even inside the house. Brown hair tied in an elaborate style, a pretty face, but with a permanently dissatisfied expression. She came to the kitchen several times a day, inspecting everything with critical eyes, giving dry orders, complaining about insignificant details. It was on the 3rd day that Marianne saw Vincent North for the first time since fainting. She was in the backyard, behind the kitchen, chopping wood for the stove. It was mid-afternoon. The sun was scorching. Marianne had taken off her apron, working only in the cotton dress already soaked with sweat. The axe was heavy, her arms ached, but she continued, lifting the axe and letting it fall onto the logs, splitting them into smaller pieces. "Marianne," called a male voice behind her. She turned around, startled, still holding the axe. A man was standing there, a few yards away. He was tall, must have been almost 6 feet, broad shoulders, a strong body but not excessively muscular. He wore riding breeches and a white shirt with sleeves rolled up to the elbows, revealing tanned forearms. His face was striking, not exactly handsome but interesting, with strong features, a square jaw, thick eyebrows. His eyes were brown, intense, intelligent. His black hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had run his hand through it recently. He appeared to be around 40, but something in his expression made him seem older. A sadness kept deep in his gaze. "Mr. North," said Marianne, dropping the axe immediately and doing a clumsy curtsy. "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were here, sir." "No need to apologize," he replied with a calm, polite voice. "I should have announced myself before arriving. I came to see how you are." "Bernice told me you're working well." Marianne felt her face heat up. "I'm trying, sir. I'm still learning a lot, but I promise I'll improve." Vincent took a few steps toward her, his boots crunching on the packed earth of the yard. "You shouldn't be chopping wood," he said with a certain concern. "That's work for the men. There are field hands who can do that." "Miss Bernice asked me to," explained Marianne. "Said we were running low on split wood, and the men were all out on the cotton harvest. I don't mind, sir. I know I came to work hard." Vincent stood in silence for a moment, studying her. Marianne felt exposed under that look. She was sweaty, dirty, with her hair falling out of its makeshift braid. She must have looked like a ragamuffin. She lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "Are you well health-wise?" asked Vincent. "Recovered from the fainting spell?" "Yes, sir, completely. It was just weakness from not eating. I'm strong now." "Good," he said, and after a pause, added something Marianne didn't expect. "If you need anything, you can speak to me directly. You are welcome here at the estate. This is your home now." Marianne raised her eyes, surprised. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Her home. As if she belonged there, as if she were more than just temporary, disposable, replaceable help. "Thank you, sir," she murmured, not knowing what else to say. Vincent nodded, gave her one last look, and went back toward the manor. Marianne stood there, holding the handle of the axe, feeling something strange happening inside her chest. It was gratitude, yes, but it was also something else, something she couldn't name, something that made her want to work even harder, be even better, show that she deserved that unexpected kindness. The following days passed in a steady rhythm. Marianne woke up, worked, ate, worked more, slept. The routine was tiring but comforting in its predictability. She was gaining muscle in her arms from carrying so many pots and logs. Her hands, which were soft when she arrived, now had calluses. Her face, burned by the sun coming through the kitchen window on hot afternoons, was ruddier, healthier. Bernice started to trust her more, letting Marianne prepare entire dishes by herself. Marianne's grits with sausage were so good that the workers started to compliment them. The other women in the kitchen, Joan and Rita, stopped treating her like a rookie and started talking more, telling stories, laughing during work. But there was an incident that changed everything. It was a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks after Marianne had arrived. The kitchen was in a frenetic pace preparing a special dinner. Vincent had received important guests, planters from neighboring properties, and Matilda had demanded a banquet. Roast chicken, suckling pig, yellow rice, stuffing, pies, fruit sweets. Bernice commanded everything with military efficiency, distributing tasks, tasting seasonings, adjusting the fire. Marianne was in charge of making a boiled milk custard, a complicated recipe that demanded constant attention. She stirred the sweet in the copper pot, taking care not to let it burn at the bottom. The steam rose, the sweet smell filling the kitchen. It was almost ready when Matilda entered. "How is the dinner?" she asked with that impatient tone she always used. "The guests arrive in an hour. Everything has to be perfect." "Everything is on time, Miss Matilda," replied Bernice calmly. "You can rest easy." Matilda walked through the kitchen, inspecting every pot, every dish. She stopped next to Marianne and looked at the custard. "What is this?" she asked, pointing to the pot. "Milk custard, Miss Matilda," explained Marianne without stopping stirring. "It's almost ready." Matilda took a spoon, tasted it, made a face. "It's tasteless," she said, throwing the spoon back. "Where's the sugar? It tastes like bland mush." Marianne felt her face flush. "The sugar goes in at the end, Miss Matilda, otherwise it crystallizes." "I didn't ask your opinion," retorted Matilda with a cold voice. "I'm telling you it's tasteless. Add sugar now." Bernice approached. "Miss Matilda, the recipe is just like that. The girl is doing it right." Matilda turned to the cook with narrowed eyes. "Are you contradicting me, Bernice?" "No, ma'am. Just explaining the recipe." Matilda went red with anger. "I am the one who gives orders here," she hissed. "This house is my responsibility since my sister died." "And I say this custard is garbage. Throw it out and make another one." Marianne felt tears of frustration burning in her eyes. She had worked an hour on that custard. It was perfect, but she couldn't contradict the mistress. She lowered her head and started to take the pot off the fire. That was when everything fell apart. The pot was heavy, hot, slippery. Marianne's hand, sweaty and trembling with emotion, lost its grip. The pot tilted, the boiling custard spilled, part falling on the floor and part splashing onto Matilda's skirt. Vincent's sister-in-law screamed, jumping back. Her expensive skirt was stained with hot custard. Her expression went from anger to absolute fury. "You incompetent fool," she shouted. "Look what you did. This dress cost a fortune." "I'm sorry, Miss Matilda," pleaded Marianne, desperate. "It was an accident, I swear. I can clean it. I can wash it." "You won't do anything else," bellowed Matilda. "You're fired. Get out of my kitchen now." Marianne felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Fired. She was going to be sent away. No work, no food, no place to stay. Back to the road, back to hunger, back to despair. "No," she begged, her voice breaking. "Please, Miss Matilda, don't send me away. It was an accident. I work hard, ma'am. You know I work hard. Please." Matilda turned her back. "Bernice, get this girl out of here." "I want her off the property before supper." The cook looked at Marianne with pity, but said nothing. No one crossed Matilda. She ran the house. Vincent delegated everything to her, and she had just decided Marianne's fate with a single sentence. Marianne left the kitchen, stumbling, tears finally streaming down her face. She went to the little room where she slept, grabbed her bundle with her few things. 2 weeks. It had lasted only 2 weeks. Now she was going back to the road, to nothingness. Maybe she'd starve to death somewhere before reaching any town. Maybe it was better that way. She was so tired of fighting, so tired of losing. Marianne was leaving the room when she heard rapid footsteps in the hallway. It was Joan, one of the kitchen helpers. "Girl, wait," she whispered. "Mr. North just arrived. Bernice told him what happened. He wants to speak with you." "With her?" Marianne wiped her face with the back of her hand. "But why? I don't know. But he seemed mad, very mad, and not at you." Marianne was led to a room she had never entered, Vincent's study in the manor. It was a masculine room, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a huge dark wood desk full of papers and maps, the smell of leather and pipe tobacco. Vincent was standing behind the desk, hands leaning on the surface, his expression tense. Matilda was there too, arms crossed, her skirt still stained with custard. Bernice was in a corner, silent. "Marianne," said Vincent upon seeing her enter, "come closer, please." She obeyed, her legs trembling. "Mr. North," she began, her voice failing, "I am so sorry for what happened. I didn't mean to ruin Miss Matilda's dress. It was an accident." "I know it was," said Vincent with a firm voice. "Bernice told me everything, and she also told me that you were doing the job correctly. That my sister-in-law interfered against the head cook's advice, and that the accident happened because you were nervous and pressured." Matilda exploded. "Vincent, are you believing a common servant over me? I am your sister-in-law. I am your late wife's sister. I've managed this house since Gabrielle died." "And I thank you for that, Matilda," replied Vincent without altering his tone. "But you do not have the authority to fire staff without speaking to me first. This is my estate." "The employees answer to me." Matilda went red. "Since when do you care about what happens in the kitchen?" she asked with a voice full of venom. "Since when does a new maid deserve your special attention?" "Since she was unjustly accused and punished," retorted Vincent. "Marianne stays, and I want no more arguments about this." The silence that followed was heavy, tense, dangerous. Matilda looked at Marianne with pure hatred. Then she looked at Vincent with something different, a mix of hurt, jealousy, and anger. "Fine," she said with an icy voice. "She stays, but don't come asking me to manage your house if you're going to undermine my decisions in front of the help." Matilda left the room, slamming the door. The sound echoed through the manor. Bernice cleared her throat uncomfortably. "Mr. North, if I may, can I go back to the kitchen? Dinner won't make itself." "You may go, Bernice. And thank you for telling me about what occurred." The cook left, closing the door softly this time. Marianne and Vincent were left alone. She didn't know if she should stay or leave too. She stood there, the bundle with her things still clutched against her chest. "You can put that down," said Vincent, pointing to the bundle. "You won't need it." Marianne obeyed, placing the bundle on the floor. "Thank you, Mr. North," she whispered. "I don't know how to thank you." "Miss Matilda is right, I'm just a maid. You didn't need to do this for me." Vincent walked around the desk and stopped in front of her. Up close he seemed even taller, more imposing, but his eyes were gentle. "Marianne," he said, "you are not just a maid, you are a person. And on this estate, as long as I am the owner, no one will be treated unjustly. Not you, nor any other worker." Marianne felt a lump in her throat. It had been so long since anyone defended her. So long since anyone treated her as if she mattered. She tried to speak, but the words didn't come out. She just nodded. Vincent hesitated, as if he were going to say something else. Then changed his mind. "You can go back to your work," he said gently. "And don't worry about Matilda. She'll cool off." Marianne picked up her bundle and left. But before closing the door, she looked back. Vincent was standing there, looking out the window, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched. He looked so lonely in that moment, so lost in his own thoughts, that Marianne felt a pang of compassion. That man had everything: wealth, land, power. But he had lost his wife, lived in a house commanded by a resentful sister-in-law, and seemed to carry an invisible weight on his shoulders. She didn't understand then why she cared so much. Didn't understand why her heart squeezed seeing him like that. But something changed in that moment, something small and frightening. A seed planted without her realizing. After that day, Matilda stopped coming to the kitchen so frequently. When she did, she ignored Marianne completely, as if she didn't exist. The other maids in the house, who had seen the whole scene, began to treat Marianne with a certain cautious reverence. The girl the boss had publicly defended against his own sister-in-law. That meant something. No one knew exactly what, but it meant something. Marianne tried to ignore the looks, the whispered conversations that stopped when she approached. She focused on the work, on being as good as possible, on proving that Vincent had made the right choice in keeping her. It was 3 days after the incident that the thing happened that would change everything. Marianne had worked since before dawn. It was Saturday, bread-making day for the whole week. She had kneaded dough for hours, her arms aching, her back complaining. When the last loaf finally came out of the oven, it was nearly noon. Bernice released her to rest for an hour before starting to prepare lunch. Marianne went to her little room, lay down on the bed without even taking off her apron. She was just going to close her eyes for a few minutes, she thought. Just a few minutes to rest, but the accumulated fatigue of weeks of hard labor finally took its toll. She plunged into a deep, heavy, complete sleep. It was a noise that woke her, the sound of the bedroom door opening. Marianne opened her eyes, confused, still half asleep. The light coming through the window was different, stronger, more slanted. What time was it? How long had she slept? She tried to sit up, but her head spun. That was when she realized she wasn't alone. Someone was sitting on the edge of the bed. Vincent. Marianne froze in surprise. What was he doing there? Why was he in her room? Had she overslept? Was she late for work? Had he come to reprimand her? But Vincent didn't look angry. His expression was soft, almost worried. "You were sleeping deeply," he said in a low voice. "Bernice told me you worked since 4 in the morning. I came to see if you were all right." Marianne tried to straighten her hair, which had come completely out of its braid while she slept. She must have looked like a scarecrow. "Sorry, Mr. North," she murmured. "I didn't mean to sleep so long. I'll go back to the kitchen now." "No," he said, raising a hand in a gesture for her to stay. "You need to rest. Bernice is taking care of everything." It was then that Vincent did something completely unexpected. He looked at her hair, disheveled, falling over her shoulders in dark, wild waves. Marianne always tied her hair back while working, a tight braid hidden under a kerchief. But now it was all loose, messy, full of sleep knots. "Your hair is all tangled," observed Vincent. Marianne felt her face catch fire with shame. "Sorry, sir, I'll fix it." But before she could do anything, Vincent reached out to the dresser beside the bed and picked up Marianne's old brush, the one with half the bristles missing. "May I?" he asked. Marianne didn't understand the question. May he what? Then she saw him lift the brush. Her mind simply stopped functioning. He was asking permission to comb her hair. That made no sense. Estate owners didn't comb maids' hair. Men didn't comb the hair of women they barely knew. It was too intimate, too personal, too strange. But Marianne was so shocked she couldn't say no. She just nodded, mute. Vincent moved to sit behind her on the bed. Marianne felt the mattress dip with his weight. She felt the heat of his body close, not touching but almost. Then she felt the first pass of the brush in her hair. He did it slowly, with extreme care. When he found a knot, he stopped and untangled it gently with his fingers before continuing. The brush glided through the strands, from the root to the tips, once, twice, 3 times. Vincent said nothing. He just brushed, with a concentration almost reverent, as if that were the most important thing in the world. Marianne sat completely still. She dared not breathe too loud. She dared not move. Strange sensations ran through her body, shivers on the back of her neck where his fingers accidentally grazed, a warmth in her chest that rose to her face. No one had brushed her hair since her mother died. And even when her mother did it, it wasn't like this. It wasn't with this absurd delicacy, this dedicated attention, as if every strand were precious. "Like silk," murmured Vincent suddenly, more to himself than to her. "Your hair feels like silk. When was the last time someone took care of you, Marianne?" The question hit Marianne like a punch to the stomach. She felt tears burning in her eyes without understanding why. "No one," she whispered with a trembling voice. "Since my mama died, no one." The brush stopped. Vincent stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Marianne felt something that made her tremble from head to toe. He touched her shoulder, just a light, brief touch over her dress. "Now there is someone," he said in a low voice. As long as you are here, you won't be alone." That was when the bedroom door opened with a bang. Matilda stood there, eyes wide with shock and then narrowing with absolute fury. She looked at Vincent sitting on the bed behind Marianne, at the brush in his hand, at her hair loose and shining in the window light. "What is happening here?" Matilda's voice was a snake's hiss. Vincent stood up calmly, placing the brush back on the dresser. "Nothing that concerns you, Matilda. Nothing that concerns me," she repeated, incredulous. "You are in a maid's bedroom, combing her hair as if she were your wife, and you say it doesn't concern me. What would Gabrielle say if she saw this?" "Gabrielle is dead," said Vincent with a hard voice, "and you have no authority to question me about anything." Matilda took a step inside the room, trembling with rage. "Everyone will know about this," she hissed. "I'll tell the whole family. They'll know you're getting involved with a poor girl, with no family, with nothing. They'll say you've lost your mind, that loneliness has driven you mad." "They can say what they want," replied Vincent without raising his voice. "Now get out of this room." Matilda looked at Marianne with distilled hatred. "This won't stay like this," she said, before turning and leaving, slamming the door again. The silence that remained was deafening. Marianne couldn't look at Vincent. Her heart beat so hard she was sure he could hear it. What had just happened? What did that mean? And what was Matilda going to do with that information? "I'm sorry," said Vincent finally. "It wasn't my intention to cause trouble for you. I just wanted to help." "You don't need to apologize, sir," murmured Marianne, still looking at the floor. "It was kind of you. Except now Miss Matilda is going to hate me even more." "Matilda won't do anything," guaranteed Vincent. "She has no power here." But Marianne needed to ask a question, even if she was afraid of the answer. "Why?" she asked, finally raising her eyes to him. "Why are you doing this for me? Why did you defend me? Why come here? I'm nobody. I'm just a poor maid." Vincent looked at her for a long moment. His brown eyes were intense, full of something Marianne couldn't decipher. "Because you deserve to be seen," he said simply. "Because there is something in you, a strength, a light, that reminds me there are still good things in the world. And because it's been a long time since I felt like taking care of someone." He left before Marianne could respond. She stayed there alone, sitting on the bed, one hand touching the hair he had combed with such dedication. Something immense and terrifying was happening, something that could destroy her, but something that could also save her. She didn't know yet which of the two it would be. The news of what had happened in Marianne's room spread through the estate like fire in dry brush. Matilda took it upon herself personally to ensure that every servant, every field hand, every person who set foot on St. Clair Manor knew that the boss had combed the new kitchen helper's hair. She didn't tell the story neutrally. She told it with poisonous insinuations, strategic pauses, meaningful looks that left people imagining the worst. Marianne felt the looks change when she passed. Some were of curiosity, others of envy. A few, mainly from the older women, were of genuine worry. Bernice pulled Marianne aside 3 days after the incident and spoke to her in the pantry, far from prying ears. "Child, I need to warn you about something," said the cook in a low voice. "Miss Matilda is spreading stories about you and Mr. North. Ugly stories. You need to be careful." "I didn't do anything wrong," protested Marianne, feeling panic rising in her chest. "He just brushed my hair. That was all." "I know, girl. I believe you. But you need to understand how things work. Mr. North is a rich man, a widower, alone. Anything he does that looks like interest in a woman turns into gossip, and you, forgive me for saying it like this, but you have no family, no protection, no name. If folks start thinking you're trying to snag the boss, your life here will turn into a living hell." Marianne felt tears of frustration. "I'm not trying to snag anyone. I just want to work, earn my bread, have a place to sleep." Bernice put a hand on her shoulder, a maternal gesture that made Marianne miss her own mother with a physical intensity. "I know, daughter. But be careful. Keep your distance from him if you can. For your own good." Marianne tried. She really tried. When she saw Vincent passing through the yard, she lowered her head and kept working. When he came to the kitchen to speak with Bernice about the week's menu, Marianne made herself invisible, hiding among the pots and flour sacks. When they crossed paths in the hallways of the house, she diverted her path, but it was as if the universe conspired against her, or perhaps it was Vincent who conspired. Because he started appearing in places where Marianne was with a frequency that couldn't be coincidence. In the yard when she hung towels to dry, in the chicken coop when she collected eggs at dawn, in the vegetable garden when she picked greens for lunch. He did nothing improper, just talked, asked how she was, if the work was too heavy, if she needed anything. Talked about the farm, about the cotton harvest that was going well, about a book he had read. Simple things, normal conversations. But there was something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, that made Marianne feel as if she were catching fire from the inside. One morning, 2 weeks after the brushing incident, Marianne was in the garden picking lettuce for lunch. It was early, the sun still low on the horizon, dew shining on the leaves. The air was fresh, smelling of wet earth and vegetation. Marianne had her basket half full when she heard footsteps in the grass behind her. "Good morning, Marianne," said Vincent. She turned, wiping her dirt-stained hands on her apron. "Good morning, Mr. North. Do you need anything, sir?" He smiled, a small but genuine smile that completely transformed his serious face. "No, I was just taking my morning walk and saw you here. Can I help?" Marianne blinked, surprised. "Help? You want to help pick lettuce, sir?" "Why not?" he replied, already crouching down beside her. "I learned to work the land when I was a child before the estate grew. My father insisted I knew how to do every kind of job." They worked side by side in silence for a few minutes. Vincent picked the lettuce with care, choosing the nicest ones, pulling them without damaging the roots. His hands were large, calloused from riding horses and handling tools, but surprisingly delicate with the fragile plants. "Can I ask you something?" "Dear," said Marianne, gathering courage. "About your wife." Vincent went still for a second, then nodded slowly. "You may. What was she like?" Marianne didn't know why she was asking. Maybe because she needed to understand who the woman was who had been loved by this man, the woman whose ghost still haunted the manor. Vincent stayed quiet for so long that Marianne thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he began to speak, his voice low, controlled. "Gabriel was good," he said. "Kind to everyone, patient, dedicated to the family. We married young. I was 22, and she was 18. It was a marriage arranged by the families, as was custom. We were friends more than lovers, companions more than passionate. She fulfilled her role as wife, I fulfilled my role as husband. It was comfortable, predictable, safe." He paused, pulled another lettuce, put it in the basket. "She fell ill suddenly," he continued. "Fever that wouldn't break, cough that wouldn't pass. In 3 weeks she was dead. Pneumonia, the doctor said. I felt guilty because I couldn't feel the devastating pain I should have felt. I felt sadness, yes. I missed her company. But I didn't feel like I had lost half of myself. And that made me realize we never had the kind of love that really matters. We had respect, affection, habit, but we didn't have passion. We didn't have that thing that makes you wake up in the morning happy just because the other person exists." Marianne was speechless. That was the most honest, rawest, most intimate thing anyone had ever shared with her. "Why are you telling me this?" she whispered. Vincent finally looked at her. "Because you asked. And because I don't want you to think I'm still living in the past, tied to the ghost of a dead wife. Gabrielle was important, but she's gone. And I'm still here, still alive, still wanting to feel real things." The air between them became charged. heavy with unspoken meanings. Marianne couldn't look away. Vincent neither. They stayed like that, crouched in the middle of the garden, the basket of lettuce forgotten, just looking at each other while the sun rose slowly and birds sang in the surrounding trees. It was Matilda's strident voice that broke the moment. "Vincent," she called from the manor porch, "you have a visitor. Colonel Bernard arrived." Vincent blinked as if waking from a trance. He stood up, wiped his hands on his pants. "I have to go," he said with a touch of frustration in his voice. "But Marianne, I want you to know one thing. I don't care what Matilda or anyone else is saying. I like talking to you. I like being near you, and I won't stop just because some people don't approve." He left before Marianne could respond. She stayed there kneeling among the lettuce plants, heart beating out of rhythm, head spinning with the weight of those words. He had basically admitted he felt something for her. Something real, something dangerous. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this story. Because what comes next will move you even more. The following days were a roller coaster of emotions for Marianne. Vincent no longer hid his interest. When there was a formal dinner, he specifically asked that Marianne help serve the table just to have her nearby. When someone from the family visited, he made a point of introducing Marianne as a valuable employee of the estate. When Matilda complained about something Marianne had done, he took Marianne's side automatically. His sister-in-law was going crazy. Matilda had spent 2 years managing that farm, commanding that house, waiting patiently for Vincent to realize she was the logical choice to be the new Mrs. North. She had beauty. She had breeding. She had the right blood. She was the sister of the late wife, which would make the transition natural, acceptable to society. She had planned everything meticulously, and then that girl appeared, that orphan with nothing, no one, of no value whatsoever. And somehow she had captured Vincent's attention in a way Matilda never managed in 2 years of daily cohabitation. Marianne felt Matilda's hostility like something physical, a weight in the air whenever they entered the same room. The sister-in-law didn't scream anymore, didn't make public scenes, but she did worse things, subtle, cruel, calculated things. It started with small sabotages. Marianne would wake up and discover her clean clothes, which she had washed and left drying on the line, had disappeared. Bernice found rat droppings in the food Marianne prepared right before serving, forcing everything to be thrown out and remade in a hurry. Marianne was ordered to do impossible tasks, like scrubbing the entire floor of the manor alone before dinner, or washing 50 pieces of bedding by hand in a single day. Bernice realized what was happening. The other maids too, but no one said anything. Defying Matilda was dangerous. She still had power, still had influence with the North family, could still make any employee's life a hell in ways Vincent wouldn't see. It was on a Sunday afternoon, a partial day off for the staff, that Marianne finally reached her limit. She had spent the morning washing her own clothes and taking advantage of the sun to read an old book she had found in the room, a worn romance about pirates and adventures at sea. Reading was a luxury she had almost forgotten. Her mother had taught her to read as a child, using the family Bible and old newspapers. Marianne wasn't very literate, but knew enough to lose herself in stories. She was so absorbed in reading, she didn't hear the footsteps approaching. She only realized she wasn't alone when a shadow blocked the sunlight coming through the window. Marianne raised her eyes and found Matilda standing in the bedroom doorway, an expression of cold triumph on her face. "Enjoying your day off?" asked Matilda with a sugary voice. "Yes, ma'am," replied Marianne cautiously, closing the book. "Do you need anything?" Matilda entered the room uninvited, looking around with disdain. "I've been thinking a lot about you," she said. "About how a girl with no family, no money, no nothing, managed to make Mr. North interested in her. And you know what conclusion I reached?" Marianne didn't answer, just waited, body tense. "You're smart," continued Matilda. Smarter than you look. You realized Mr. North is vulnerable, lonely, needy, and decided to take advantage of that. Make him fall in love to guarantee your future, a classic strategy of women without character. That isn't true, said Marianne, feeling anger growing in her chest. I did nothing to make him interested in me. I asked for nothing. I planned nothing. Of course you'll deny it, retorted Matilda with a cold smile, but I know women like you. I've seen several trying to latch onto rich men, using beauty, youth, a false innocence. But it won't work, Marianne, because I won't allow it. Marianne stood up from the bed, holding the book against her chest like a shield. You don't have power over what Mr. North feels, or doesn't feel. Don't I? Matilda's eyes shone dangerously. You are mistaken, girl. I have a lot of power. I know the entire North family. I have friendships with all the important families in the region. One word from me and your reputation is destroyed. I'll spread that you are seducing Mr. North, that you enter his room at night, that you throw yourself at him. I'll say you steal food from the pantry. I'll invent that I saw you with field hands in improper situations. And you know what will happen. People will believe me, not you, because I am somebody and you are nobody. Marianne felt her blood run cold. This was a direct threat. And worse, it was a real threat. Matilda was right. In a confrontation of credibility between the sister-in-law of a rich planter and an orphan maid, there was no doubt who would win. "Why are you doing this?" asked Marianne with a trembling voice. "What did I do to deserve so much hate?" "You exist," hissed Matilda. "That's all. Your existence is a threat to my plans. So, I'm going to give you two options. First option, you leave the estate voluntarily. Make up some excuse. Say you have family in another town, that you got a better job, anything. I'll even give a letter of reference and some money for the trip. Second option, you stay, and I destroy you. There won't be anything left of your reputation, your dignity, your life. And even if Mr. North tries to defend you, it won't do any good. Society will turn its back on him if he insists on getting involved with a disgraced woman." Marianne didn't know what to say. Matilda was offering a way out, yes, but a way out that meant giving up. Giving up on Vincent, giving up on the only place she had felt valued, giving up on the only chance to be happy that had appeared in her life since her parents died. "I need to think," said Marianne finally. "You have until tomorrow morning," replied Matilda, turning her back. "After that, I start spreading the stories. And believe me, I will make you regret ever coming to this farm." Matilda left, leaving Marianne alone and trembling. She sat back down on the bed, her legs too weak to hold her. Tears ran down her face without her trying to stop them. It wasn't fair. She hadn't asked for Vincent to be interested in her. She hadn't planned any of this. She had only tried to survive, work honestly, live with dignity. And now she was being forced to choose between her reputation and her heart. Marianne didn't know what to do. Part of her wanted to grab her things and leave immediately before the situation got worse. But another part, a new and brave part that had grown in the last weeks, refused to run. Refused to let Matilda win. Refused to abandon Vincent without even explaining why. That night, Marianne barely managed to sleep. She tossed in bed for hours, her mind spinning in infinite circles. When she finally fell asleep, she had nightmares about her mother, about the typhoid fever, about being alone and lost on an endless road. She woke up with the first crow of the rooster before the sun even rose. She got up, washed her face with cold water from the basin, dressed mechanically. She was going to the kitchen to start the workday as always. But when she opened the bedroom door, she found Vincent standing there in the hallway, hand raised as if he were going to knock. The two stood paralyzed in surprise. "What are you doing here, sir?" whispered Marianne, looking around nervously. "If someone sees, it'll cause even more gossip." "I need to speak with you," said Vincent with a low but urgent voice. "Last night Matilda came to my study. She told me you were going to resign today, that you found work on another farm. Is it true?" Marianne averted her eyes, unable to lie looking at him. "I was thinking of leaving, yes, sir." "Why?" His voice had a note of pain that made Marianne's heart twist. "Was it because of me? Because of what people are saying?" "It's complicated," murmured Marianne. Vincent took a step closer. "Marianne, look at me. Please." She obeyed, raising her eyes slowly. His face was tense, intense eyes locked on hers. "I can't let you leave," he said. "Not without telling you a few things first. And I don't care who is listening or who is going to spread gossip. I need you to know." "Mr. North, please," pleaded Marianne. "Don't do this. It will only make things worse." "It won't make it worse because it can't get worse," he retorted. "Marianne, I'm 38 years old. I married young, was widowed young, spent 2 years living like a dead man, working mechanically, existing without living. And then you arrived. A 19-year-old girl, with nothing, no one, but with a dignity, a strength, a light in her eyes that made me remember what it is to be alive." Marianne felt the air leave her lungs. "No," she whispered, "don't say that." "Why not? It's the truth. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was just pity, just a desire to help someone vulnerable. But it isn't. It's more than that. I wake up thinking about you, spend the day looking for excuses to be near you. I get happy when I see you smiling. I get angry when someone treats you badly. That isn't pity, Marianne. That is something else. Something I never felt before, not even for my own wife." "Stop," begged Marianne, with tears running down her face. "Stop talking. This can't happen. You are rich, have position, have family. I am nothing. If you get involved with me, it will destroy your reputation. People will say horrible things. They'll say you went mad, that you're being manipulated, that you lost your judgment." "So what?" Vincent's voice rose slightly. "So what if they say it? Am I going to live my life worried about what hypocrites think? Am I going to marry someone society approves of, but who makes me feel nothing? I already did that once, Marianne. I won't do it again." "But I don't want to be the cause of your ruin," said Marianne desperately. "I don't want you to look back 10 years from now and hate me for destroying your life." Vincent reached out, hesitant, and touched her face. It was the first truly intimate touch between them. The warm palm against the cheek wet with tears. Marianne closed her eyes, feeling as if she were catching fire. "You won't destroy my life," whispered Vincent. "You will save it, if you let me." "I don't know how," whimpered Marianne. "I don't know how this can work." "Then let me figure it out," he said. "Trust me, don't leave, stay, fight with me, face whatever comes with me, please." Marianne opened her eyes and looked at him. At that man who, against all logic, against all social rules, against everything that made sense, had chosen her. An orphan without a dowry, without family, without anything to offer except herself. And he was there, begging her to stay, offering to face the judgment of the whole world if necessary. "I'm afraid," she admitted with a small voice. "Me too," replied Vincent, "but I'm more afraid of losing you." It was in that moment they heard a stifled scream at the end of the hall. Both turned their heads and saw Matilda standing there, a hand over her mouth, eyes wide with shock and fury. She had seen everything, the touch, the intimacy, the confession. "You are insane," she hissed, "completely insane. Vincent, you are lowering yourself in a way that Gabriel would be ashamed of. And you calculating tramp, you got what you wanted, but it won't last. I will personally guarantee it doesn't last." Matilda ran down the hall. Vincent took a step to go after her, but Marianne held his arm. "Let her go," said Marianne. "It won't do any good. She already decided to hate us. Nothing you say will change that." Vincent took a deep breath, jaw tense. "Then what do we do?" Marianne thought for a long moment, remembered Matilda's threat, the stories that would be spread, the defamation, the destruction. But she also remembered Vincent's words, the way he had touched her face, the promise implicit in that touch. That she wasn't alone anymore, that she had someone willing to fight for her. "We do what has to be done," said Marianne, with a courage she didn't know she possessed. "We live, we work, we care for each other openly, without shame, and when people talk, and they will talk, we endure it. Together." Vincent smiled, a genuine and beautiful smile that completely transformed his face. "Together," he repeated. "I like that." They stood there for another minute, just looking at each other, knowing the war had begun, but feeling for the first time that perhaps they had a chance to win. The next few days were exactly as difficult as Marianne had predicted. Matilda kept her promise. She spread elaborate and poisonous stories throughout the entire estate and neighboring properties, said she had seen Marianne leaving Vincent's room at dawn, said she had found explicit love letters, said she had heard improper sounds coming from his study. Each story was more absurd than the last, but people believed because they wanted to believe, because it was a juicy, scandalous, irresistible story. The other maids stopped speaking to Marianne. The field hands made rude comments when she passed. In the nearest town, St. Sebastian Valley, when Marianne went with Bernice to buy supplies, the shopkeepers treated her with coldness, refused to look her in the eye, muttered among themselves as soon as she left the stores. Marianne endured it all with a silent dignity that surprised even herself. She didn't respond to the provocations, didn't cry in front of anyone, didn't defend herself from the accusations because she knew it wouldn't do any good. Just kept working, being impeccable in all tasks, proving through actions that she was a person of character. Vincent did something more direct. He called all the estate employees for a meeting in the central courtyard. It was a Saturday afternoon, the strong sun heating the red earth, all the workers sweaty and tired from the harvest. Vincent climbed the steps of the porch so everyone could see him. "I want to speak about the rumors that are circulating," he began with a firm, loud voice, "about me and about Marianne. Some of the stories are exaggerated, some are completely false, but the essence is true. Yes, I have an interest in Marianne. Yes, I intend to court her properly. Yes, if she accepts, I intend to ask her to marry me in the future." A shocked murmur ran through the crowd. Matilda, who was watching from the manor window, went white as paper. "I know this scandalizes many people," continued Vincent. "I know some think it inappropriate, but this is my life, my choice, my responsibility. Marianne is an honest, hard-working woman of good character. The fact she has no dowry or family does not diminish her value as a person. And if anyone here has a problem with my choices, you can resign now, and I will pay your full severance. But if you stay, I expect respect, for her and for me." No one resigned, but the atmosphere changed. People became cautious, reserved, waiting to see how it would resolve. Some of the older workers, who remembered Vincent as a boy playing on the farm, seemed genuinely happy. A new story was beginning, something different, something that broke the old rules. Bernice pulled Marianne aside that night. "Child, Mr. North made a public declaration. Do you understand what that means?" Marianne nodded. "It means there's no going back. He bet his reputation on me. If I disappoint, if I'm not the person he thinks I am, I will destroy him." "Then don't disappoint," said Bernice simply. "Be the woman he sees when he looks at you. Be strong, be brave, be worthy. And when all this is over, when folks accept it or stop caring, you will be the lady of this manor. And girl, I'm going to be proud to have known you when you were still scrubbing pots in my kitchen." Marianne hugged the cook, feeling a maternal love she thought she would never feel again. "Thank you, Bernice, for everything, for defending me, for teaching me, for believing in me." "Oh, child," said Bernice with teary eyes. "You are special, always were. just needed someone to see it. That night, Marianne couldn't sleep. She lay thinking about everything that had happened. 3 months ago, she had arrived there with nothing, desperate, hungry, alone. And now she had an incredible man saying publicly he wanted to marry her. It was surreal. It was frightening. It was wonderful. She got out of bed and went to the bedroom window. The night was clear, the full moon illuminating the cotton fields that stretched to the horizon. Everything was quiet, just the song of crickets and the distant sound of an owl hooting. Marianne saw a light turn on in Vincent's study in the manor. He wasn't sleeping either. Was he thinking of her as she was thinking of him? Was he also afraid of the future, of the consequences, but also hopeful? As if he had sensed she was watching, Vincent appeared in the study window. The distance was great, maybe 50 yards, but even so, Marianne could see his silhouette outlined against the lantern light. He was also looking out, also contemplating the night. Marianne didn't think, just acted. She lit the candle in her room and held it to the window, a small but visible signal in the darkness. Vincent must have seen it, because he waved, a soft movement of his hand. And then he did something that made Marianne's heart melt. He placed his hand over his own chest, over his heart, in a silent but perfectly clear message. Marianne repeated the gesture, hand over heart, smiling, even knowing he probably couldn't see her face from so far away. They stayed like that for long minutes, two silhouettes in distant windows, connected by something stronger than words, stronger than walls, stronger than everything trying to separate them. It was like that, in that silent moment under the full moon of a Georgia estate in 1912, that Marianne understood a fundamental truth. She had fallen in love, completely, irrevocably, dangerously in love with Vincent North. And as frightening as it was, as difficult as the road ahead would be, she was no longer alone. And that made all the difference in the world. The tension at St. Clair Manor in the following days was like a storm forming, dense and heavy, ready to explode at any moment. Matilda had lost the public battle when Vincent made his declaration, but that only made her more determined to win the war. She circled the house like a snake, waiting for the right moment to strike, eyes always calculating, mind always plotting. Marianne felt the danger in the air, saw it in Matilda's expressions, in the cold smiles she gave when she thought no one was looking, in the way she whispered at length with a cousin who had come to visit from a neighboring estate. Something was being planned. Marianne didn't know what, but knew it would be bad. Vincent realized it too. He began spending more time in the manor, working in the study instead of in the fields, as if he wanted to keep Marianne within his field of vision. But he couldn't be with her all the time. He had a farm to manage, workers to supervise, business to attend to, and Matilda knew that. She was just waiting for the perfect opportunity. The opportunity came on a Tuesday, 2 weeks after Vincent's public declaration. It was market day in the neighboring town, and Bernice needed to buy flour, sugar, salt, and other supplies. Usually she went with Joan or Rita, but that day both were sick, with a fever that had taken down half the kitchen staff. Bernice looked at Marianne hesitantly. "You have to go with me, child," said the cook. "I can't carry everything alone. My back can't take it anymore. But with everything happening, I don't know if it's good for you to appear in town." "I'll go," replied Marianne with a courage she didn't completely feel. "I can't hide forever, and you need help." They left early in the morning, in the wagon pulled by 2 horses, taking empty sacks and a long shopping list. The trip to the village took an hour over dusty dirt roads, passing other smaller farms, cornfields, and vegetable patches. The sun was strong, the sky blue without a single cloud, birds singing in the trees lining the path. The village of St. Sebastian Valley was small, maybe 200 inhabitants, with a main commercial street and some side streets with modest houses. There was the church on top of a hill, The general store, the fabric shop, the pharmacy, the butcher, and the central square with a gazebo where parties happened on celebration days. It was a simple place, where everyone knew everyone, and where gossip travelled faster than horses. When Marianne stepped down from the wagon in front of the general store, she felt the stares immediately. Women who were talking on the sidewalk fell silent. Men passing by stopped to observe. Children were pulled close to their mothers, as if Marianne were dangerous. The whispers began, a constant murmur like the buzzing of bees. Marianne held her head high and followed Bernice into the store. The owner, Mr. Tate, a fat man of about 60 who had always been friendly, greeted her with coldness. "Morning," he said dryly, before turning to Bernice with a forced smile. "Miss Bernice." The usual list. The cook handed over the paper with the purchases. While Mr. Tate separated the goods, Marianne stayed near the door, trying to be invisible, but it was impossible. 2 elegant women entered the store, saw Marianne, and one of them spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's her," she said with disdain. "The girl who is seducing poor Vincent North. What a shame! An opportunist with no family clinging to a vulnerable widower." The other woman made a sound of agreement. "Before long she'll be pregnant, you'll see. It's always like that. Trap the men with a child and then live off them forever." Marianne felt her face catch fire with humiliation and anger. It wasn't true. None of that was true. She and Vincent hadn't even been alone for real, had never kissed, never done anything improper. But how to defend herself? Anything she said would be used against her. Bernice, realizing Marianne's discomfort, hurried the shopping. "Come on, child," she said, picking up the heaviest sacks. "Help me here with the sugar." They carried everything to the wagon in silence, under the judging gazes of half a dozen people who had gathered on the sidewalk. Marianne felt tears burning in her eyes, but refused to let them fall. She wasn't going to give these people the satisfaction of seeing her cry. It was when they were climbing onto the wagon that Marianne saw something that made her blood run cold. Matilda was there, in the door of the fabric shop across the street, talking animatedly with a priest Marianne didn't know. A tall, thin man of about 50, in a black cassock and a severe expression. Matilda pointed discreetly in Marianne's direction, said something in the priest's ear, and he looked at Marianne with eyes full of disapproval, and something darker, something like revulsion. Marianne climbed into the wagon quickly. "Bernice, let's go, now." The cook whipped the horses and they left at a brisk pace. Marianne looked back and saw Matilda smiling, a smile of absolute triumph that made Marianne's stomach turn. Something very bad was about to happen. She could feel it. When they arrived back at the estate, it was already noon. Bernice and Marianne unloaded the supplies in the pantry and went back to the kitchen to prepare lunch. But there was something strange in the air. The other employees were agitated, whispering among themselves, casting furtive glances at Marianne. "What is it?" asked Bernice to one of the workers who had come to fetch water. "Why is everyone acting strange?" The man, an elderly fellow named John Peter, looked around before answering in a low voice. "There's a visitor in the manor, Miss Bernice. Father Ignatius from the parish in 3 Rivers. He came to speak with Mr. North about a serious matter. And Miss Matilda is in there too, in the parlour, participating in the conversation." Marianne felt a tightening in her chest. The priest. The same one she had seen talking to Matilda in town. And now he was there, in the manor, speaking with Vincent. About her, obviously. Matilda had brought a representative of the church to pressure Vincent to give her up. Marianne couldn't concentrate on work for the rest of the afternoon. She burned the beans. Let the rice stick to the bottom of the pot. Cut her own finger while chopping onions, so distracted she didn't even feel the knife slip. Bernice treated the wound with a clean cloth and vinegar, but was worried. "Child, you need to calm down," said the cook. Mr. North won't let a priest change his mind. He's hard-headed when he wants to be. Decided he wants you, won't give up easy." "But what if he does?" whispered Marianne with a trembling voice. "What if the priest convinces him he's making a mistake, that he's staining the family name, that he'll lose everyone's respect? Vincent is a good man, but he is also a businessman. He needs the goodwill of other families, of other planters. If he chooses me, he could lose all that." "If he loses it, then it wasn't worth anything anyway," retorted Bernice firmly. "Now stop tormenting yourself and go rest a bit. I'll finish dinner today. You're too nervous to cook." Marianne went to her room, but couldn't rest. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands shaking, mind racing. She thought about her options. She could run away again, disappear before she caused more trouble. Could find Vincent and tell him he should give her up, that it wasn't worth all this suffering. Or she could stay and face it, trust that what they felt for each other was strong enough to survive any storm. It was almost sunset when she finally heard heavy footsteps in the hall. A firm knock on the door. Marianne opened it and found Vincent there, face tense, jaw clenched, eyes full of an emotion she couldn't identify. Was it anger? Was it disappointment? Was it resignation? "I need to speak with you," he said with a controlled voice. "Now, in the study." Marianne followed him in silence, heart beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. They crossed the manor, passing servants who lowered their eyes until they reached the study. Vincent closed the door behind them, locked it with the key. The sound of the lock turning echoed like a gunshot in the silence. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button so you don't miss the exciting ending of this story. Vincent went to the desk, leaned both hands on the surface, stood with his back to Marianne for a long moment. She waited, legs trembling, not knowing if she should speak or stay quiet. Finally he turned around. "Father Ignatius came to pay me a visit today," he began. "Brought by Matilda, obviously. He spent 3 hours explaining to me that I am committing a sin, that I am dishonoring my wife's memory, that I am being seduced by a woman of dubious character who only wants my money. He used strong words, Marianne, called you things I will not repeat because I refuse to give voice to those disgusting accusations." Marianne felt tears running down her face. This was it then. Vincent had listened to the priest, had believed, had decided it wasn't worth fighting. "I understand, Mr. North," she whispered. "You have to think of your position, your family, your reputation. I won't cause more trouble. I'll leave tomorrow morning." "You understood nothing," cut Vincent with a firm voice. "I sent the priest away. Told him I didn't need his opinion on my personal life. Told him the accusations against you were malicious lies spread by envious people. And told him that if the church had a problem with my choices, then I would stop making donations to the parish. Father Ignatius left here red with rage, but he left, and he took Matilda with him because I sent her away too." Marianne blinked, confused. "Sent her away? What do you mean?" "Matilda doesn't live in this house anymore," explained Vincent. "I gave her 2 options. First, go live with her parents in Macon. Second, go to the house I have in the city, a smaller property but comfortable. She chose the townhouse. She's packing her bags right now. Tomorrow morning a wagon takes her and all her things. She will never set foot here again." Marianne couldn't process what she was hearing. He had kicked out his own sister-in-law, the deceased wife's sister, because of her. "But the whole family will turn against you," protested Marianne. "They'll say you're wrong, that you went crazy, that you need help." "Probably," agreed Vincent, shrugging. "And honestly, I don't care. I'm tired, Marianne. Tired of living for others' expectations. Tired of doing what society expects. Tired of being alone just because people think it hasn't been enough time for mourning. Gabrielle died 2 years ago. I cried, respected her memory, lived the grief properly. But she's gone, and I'm still here. And I found someone who makes me want to live again. Am I going to throw that away because a priest and a resentful sister-in-law don't approve? No, never. He walked to Marianne, stopped right in front of her, raised his hand slowly, giving her time to back away if she wanted. But Marianne didn't retreat. He touched her face, wiping the tears with his thumb, the touch soft as a feather. "I want to court you," he said in a low voice. "The right way, respectful, traditional. I want everyone to know my intentions. I want you to use my gifts, sit at my table, be treated like the woman I intend to make my wife, but only if you want it, if you accept me." Marianne couldn't speak. Emotion closed her throat. So she just nodded. The tears now of happiness, of relief, of something greater she didn't know how to name. Vincent smiled. "I need to hear you say it, Marianne. I need to be sure." "I accept," she whispered finally. "I accept being courted. I accept everything you're offering, and I accept fighting by your side no matter what comes." Vincent pulled her into a hug, the first real hug between them. Marianne felt the strong arms around her, the broad chest against her face, his smell that was leather and tobacco and something warmer, more human. She felt safe for the first time since her parents' death. She felt at home. They stayed like that for long minutes, just hugging in silence, feeling each other's presence, understanding without words that they had crossed the worst part of the storm. There would still be challenges, still be judgments, still be people who disapproved. But they had chosen each other, and that was all that mattered. The following months were a revelation for Marianne. Vincent kept his promise. The courtship was public, traditional, respectful. He took her to walk through the cotton fields at dusk, always accompanied by Bernice or another employee as chaperone. Gave modest but significant gifts, a fine wool shawl for cold nights, a book of poetry he thought she would like, a silver brooch with delicate details. They talked for hours. Vincent told about his childhood on the farm, about the severe but fair father who had taught him to manage the property, about the sweet mother who had died when he was just 15. About how he had studied in Atlanta for 2 years, learning modern agricultural techniques, returning full of ideas his father resisted but eventually accepted. About the loneliness of being the only son, heir to everything, but with no one to really share it with. Marianne shared too, for the first time opening her heart completely, spoke about her parents, about the small but cheerful store, about afternoons helping her mother sew while listening to stories. About the terror of typhoid fever, nights without sleep caring for dying parents, the absolute despair when she realized she was completely alone. About the journey to the estate, the hunger, the fear, and about how everything changed when he defended her for the first time. Vincent listened to everything with total attention, asking questions, showing genuine interest. He didn't treat Marianne like a maid being elevated by charity. Treated her as an equal, as someone whose opinion mattered, whose thoughts were valuable, whose company was desired. The estate began to get used to the situation. The workers saw how Vincent was happier, lighter, smiling more frequently. Saw how Marianne continued working hard, even being courted by the boss, without giving herself airs of importance, without treating anyone with disdain. Saw it was real, that it wasn't manipulation or interest, but something genuine growing between two people who needed each other. Bernice cried with emotion sometimes when she saw the two together. "It's like watching a flower bloom," she said. "Two lonely souls finding comfort in one another." But there were still obstacles. Vincent's family, when they learned of Matilda's expulsion and the reasons, reacted with indignation. Uncles, cousins, distant relatives began appearing at the estate, all with opinions on how Vincent was making a mistake. Some came with anger, demanding he reconsider. Others came with pity, as if he were sick and needed intervention. Vincent received everyone with politeness but firmness, explained his reasons, presented Marianne respectfully, and made it clear his decisions were final and not open to debate. Some relatives eventually accepted, recognizing they couldn't change his mind. Others drifted away, cutting ties, saying he was dead to the family. Marianne saw the pain in Vincent's eyes when relatives he loved turned their backs on him, tried to comfort him, offered to release him from the promise, said he didn't need to lose his family because of her. But Vincent always answered the same thing. They are the ones losing me. They are choosing pride and prejudice instead of love and acceptance. That is their choice, not mine. It was in the 6th month of courtship, on a golden late afternoon in September, that Vincent finally made the official proposal. He had taken Marianne to a special place on the estate, a hill from where you could see the whole property, the cotton fields waving like a green sea, the white manor shining in the distance, the sky painted orange and pink by the setting sun. "Marianne," he said, taking her hands between his, "these last months were the happiest of my life. You brought light to my days, warmth to my heart, purpose to my existence. I was a half-dead man, living mechanically. You resurrected me, made me remember what it is to be truly alive." He knelt there in the grass, taking a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a simple but beautiful ring, a gold band with a small red ruby encrusted. "It's not the most expensive or extravagant ring," said Vincent, "but it was my mother's. My father gave it to her when he asked her to marry him. It is the most precious jewel I own because it carries the memory of their true love, and I want you to have it. Will you marry me, Marianne? Will you be my wife, my partner, my equal in everything? Will you build a life with me, face whatever comes by our side, grow old with me?" Marianne was weeping openly now, tears of pure joy running down her face. "Yes," she said with a choked voice. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. I want to marry you. I want all of that. I want you." Vincent slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he stood up and finally, for the first time in 6 months of respectful courtship, he kissed her. It was a soft, chaste kiss, just a touch of lips. But it was also the most powerful thing Marianne had ever felt. Waves of heat ran through her body. Her heart beat so hard she thought it would explode. Her knees went weak. Vincent held her by the waist, steadying her, deepening the kiss slightly for just a second before pulling away. "I will make you happy," he promised, with his forehead resting on hers. "Every day of your life, I will make you happy." "You already do," whispered Marianne. "Just by existing, you already make me happy." The wedding was set for 2 months later, enough time to prepare everything properly. Vincent wanted a beautiful ceremony, not extravagant but dignified. Invited the whole family, knowing many wouldn't come. Invited all the estate workers. Invited neighboring planters, merchants from the village, Pastor Davis from the St. Sebastian parish, who had shown himself more understanding than Father Ignatius. Marianne had help from Bernice and the other women of the estate to prepare her wedding dress. There was no money to buy expensive fabric in Atlanta, so they used fine white cotton, hand-embroidered with small flowers. The result was simple but beautiful, a dress that perfectly reflected who Marianne was, modest, pretty, authentic. The wedding day dawned clear and sunny, November 1912, 8 months after Marianne had arrived at the estate, fainting from hunger on the road. The ceremony would be in the small chapel on the property, a stone building with coloured stained glass and wooden pews that fit maybe 50 people. Marianne woke up with butterflies in her stomach. Bernice and other women helped her get ready, combing her hair in soft waves falling down her back, placing wildflowers as adornment. When Marianne looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the girl looking back. She was radiant, happy, transformed. The walk to the chapel was done on foot, a tradition Vincent insisted on keeping. Marianne walked slowly along the stone path, followed by Bernice and other friends she had made on the farm. Workers lined the path, taking off their hats respectfully, smiling, some with tears in their eyes, seeing the girl who had arrived, with nothing now walking as a bride. When Marianne entered the chapel, she saw Vincent waiting at the altar. He was impeccable, in a dark suit, vest, tie, hair combed back, but it was the expression on his face that made Marianne's heart squeeze. He looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, as if he didn't believe his own luck, as if he were watching a miracle happen. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. Pastor Davis conducted the vows with kindness, speaking about true love, about souls that find each other, about the courage to follow the heart even when the world judges. Marianne and Vincent exchanged rings with trembling hands, promised eternal love with choked voices, sealed the union with a chaste kiss but full of promises. When they left the chapel as husband and wife, the workers threw rice and flowers. There was a party on the estate, a celebration that lasted until late at night. There was plentiful food, music, dancing. People from the whole region attended, some out of genuine happiness, others out of curiosity, but all were well received. Marianne danced with Vincent under the stars, spinning in the yard decorated with lanterns and colored ribbons. He held her with care, as if she were fragile, but also with firmness, as if he would never let her go. "I am so happy," he whispered in her ear, "so complete. You saved me, Marianne, brought me back to life." "We saved ourselves," she corrected, smiling. "Each other." The following years were of serene happiness. Marianne grew into her role as mistress of St. Clair Manor, didn't try to be something she wasn't, didn't pretend to be born to that station, but used her own life experience to bring positive changes. She created a small school for the workers' children, teaching them to read and write on Sundays, organized a system so staff families had access to a doctor when necessary, worked alongside Vincent on farm decisions, showing a natural intelligence for numbers and management that surprised and prided him. The community that had resisted so much eventually surrendered. It was impossible to deny that Marianne was good for the estate, good for Vincent, good for everyone around. She treated everyone with respect, from the richest planters to the poorest laborers, had a genuine kindness that conquered even the most skeptical. Matilda tried to return once, 3 years after the wedding, appeared at the estate door asking to speak with Vincent, saying she had reflected that she was sorry. Vincent received her politely but firmly, explained she was welcome to visit on special occasions but couldn't live on the estate again. Matilda accepted reluctantly, but the venom had gone out of her. She was visibly older, more tired, face marked by the bitterness of having lost everything she thought she deserved. Marianne, who could have been cruel, who had every reason to reject Matilda, surprised everyone by treating the ex-sister-in-law with kindness, offered tea, conversed civilly, even gave some fresh fruit from the garden for Matilda to take. The woman left with tears in her eyes, murmuring an apology that Marianne accepted with grace. "You are too generous," said Vincent after Matilda left. "She tried to destroy you." "I know," replied Marianne, "but she didn't succeed, and holding a grudge would only poison my own heart. I prefer to forgive and move on." It was this wisdom, this emotional maturity that had grown through difficulties that made Marianne so loved. She had arrived as a scared and desperate girl, transformed into a strong, compassionate, wise woman. Vincent watched her with constant admiration. She was so different from everything he had known, so genuine, so real. He loved her more each day, a love that grew and deepened, a love that wasn't just romantic passion, but deep respect, true admiration, solid friendship. They had small rituals that marked their days. Every morning, Vincent combed Marianne's hair before she pinned it up. It had become a tradition between them, an intimate moment of connection before starting the day. Every night, they walked together to the hill where he had proposed, watching the stars, talking about the day, making plans for the future. They were happy in a simple but profound way. It wasn't fairy tale happiness without problems. They had difficulties like any couple. Argued sometimes, mainly about how to manage the farm. Vincent was more conservative, Marianne more progressive. But they always resolved it by talking, negotiating, reaching compromises. The mutual respect they had made it impossible to hold a grudge. 5 years after the wedding, on a cool May morning, Marianne woke up feeling different. There was a strange nausea, a slight dizziness. She recognized the signs because she had seen them in other women on the farm. Waited another 2 weeks to be sure before telling Vincent. She found him in the study, working on ledgers. Entered, closing the door, heart beating fast. Vincent looked up and smiled upon seeing her. "Come here," he called, extending his hand. "Haven't seen you for hours." Marianne went to him, let herself be pulled to sit on his lap, something they did when alone. "I have something to tell you," she said. "What is it?" asked Vincent, playing with her fingers distractedly. "I am expecting a baby. Our family is going to grow." Vincent went completely still. Eyes widened, mouth opened slightly, breath stopped. Then she saw the first tear run down his face, then another and another. He squeezed her against his chest with such force it almost hurt, face buried in her neck, shoulders shaking. "A son," he whispered with a broken voice. "We're going to have a child. Our family." The pregnancy was peaceful. Bernice went back into action to care for Marianne, preparing special foods and herbal teas. The baby was born on a January night in 1918, 6 years after Marianne had arrived at the estate. It was a long labor, 14 hours that left Marianne exhausted. When finally the baby's cry echoed through the room, the two collapsed in tears of relief. It was a girl, small, perfect, with a tuft of dark hair. Vincent held her with trembling hands, looking at that tiny being with absolute adoration. "What are we going to call her?" asked without being able to look away from his daughter. "Claire," said Marianne, "in honor of St. Clair of the Manor. She is our light." 2 years later, Ralph was born, and 3 years after that, Isabel arrived, completing the family. 3 healthy children growing up on a prosperous farm under the care of parents who loved each other deeply. Years passed like leaves falling from a tree. St. Clair Manor prospered under Vincent and Marianne's management, becoming a model in the region for the quality of the cotton and fair treatment of workers. Marianne expanded her social projects, creating schools and assistance systems that changed hundreds of lives. Bernice lived until she was 80, long enough to see the 3 children grow. Matilda never married, living alone and bitter until dying at 60. Marianne attended the funeral and cried genuine tears, not of longing, but of sadness for the waste. Claire married a lawyer. Ralph took over the farm alongside his father, and Isabel became a teacher, opening a school that educated hundreds of children. Vincent and Marianne grew old together, reaching 70, still walking hand in hand through the fields that witnessed the beginning of their love. Vincent died at 79 in 1953, sleeping peacefully. Marianne was by his side, holding his hand, whispering words of love as he departed. Marianne lived another 15 years until 75, surrounded by family, telling stories to grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Never married again. Said she had had her great love, and that was enough for a lifetime. When Marianne died in 1968, half the county attended the funeral. She was buried beside Vincent in the St. Clair Manor Chapel, under a tree they had planted together. On the simple but elegant tombstone, an inscription that summarized everything: Marianne Fields North, 1893-1968. Arrived with nothing, left everything. Loved, honored, remembered. The silver comb, the one he had used to comb her hair for the first time, passed from generation to generation, symbol of a love that had defied conventions and proved that a person's true worth is in their heart. St. Clair Manor exists to this day, still in the family, still producing quality crops. In the manor house, there is a large portrait of Vincent and Marianne, painted when they were about 50, holding hands, looking at the camera with serene expressions. Whoever looks can see, even through the brushstrokes, the deep love they shared. And so ends the story of the girl who arrived at the farm at 19 without a penny, but conquered something no money can buy: true love, a loving family, and a legacy that spanned generations. Because in the end, what matters isn't what you arrive with, but what you build along the way.